Shaking everybody, happy Friday. You made it to a very special episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe with Chill and Grace. I'm just saying very special just because we're recapping early, like super early. Like I feel like normally it'd probably be like a next week type of recap, but we're recapping the day of the movie The Black Panther Wakanda
Woo!
Forever dropping. So we're dropping same day recap. So before we get into it, Grace, what's up? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. As you were saying, like very special episode, I realized the little strobe lights you got going in the background.
Oh yeah.
So that's how you
um,
know, guys.
you
That's how
said,
you know.
yeah, that's how you know. We actually just bought like another pair of these lights. I'm gonna do a quick promo real quick, even though they're not paying me. But Govee is spelled Govee. They got some cool lights. That's what these are, and we bought some recently to put on the back of like let's say our TV, to fancy it up in the living room. But the fancy thing about it was these lights. It comes with a camera that's at the top of the TV that faces the screen. So the colors in the back of the TV are reactive to what's on screen. So
What?
so we just got it, and it was a birthday gift to herself, and yeah, we now have like I got her a sound bar for her birthday, and now her the entertainment room is complete
That,
now.
dude, that's so cool. I have actually, like, I didn't know that that was a thing that you can get it to match. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah.
That's
Like
dope.
I saw it once. Like once I bought these lights, I followed them on I mean not on Amazon. I got them from Amazon, but I follow them on Instagram. And once they posted this camera, I was like, that's pretty sweet. And then I think she just kind of was like, I want something like I want some lights. So I was like, okay, well, check these out.
That's
Yeah,
pretty cool. I like
yeah.
that. Very fancy.
So how was your week?
I was in the ER on Tuesday.
Oh right, you got a boot, right?
Yes,
Oh my
I'm
goodness,
a boo.
Grace.
Okay. So
Okay.
I was trying to get someone into a triangle like choke. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Keep in mind, no one asks me to show these things. I was just like, "Hey guys, let me show you these things," you know. And so like I showed a couple of different things, and that was the one I was showing on this one coworker. And
Wait, stop right there. So this is not in like where you
nope, it
normally
is not.
practice your practice.
This
This
is
is
the nope, nope.
this is at work.
This is in the on my break, shooting shit
mm.
in like the break room, and then there was like a group of us, and I'm like, guys, let me show you this. And so I was showing a couple things, and then I went around to showing this triangle choke. And so because this coworker's shoulders are so gloriously massive,
Mhm.
I can't actually set up properly. Like I'm not in the right setup, but I was like, oh, like if I could probably like squeeze and still like
Mhm.
get the top. And so I did. I tried to execute it even though my setup wasn't right. And I'm like squeezing, 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 and it's kind of funny because we're like, haha. And then we hear this loud crack come from my shin,
Yee.
and then we both just like, oh.
Oh my goodness.
And like we were laughing and joking because we were like, oh my god, imagine because like my adrenaline is so high, I don't even know that I'm actually really injured, and that's exactly what it was. Because a couple of minutes later, I was like, I can't walk. SOS, please help me. Like I sent text
Wow.
to my manager, and then yeah, and then soon after I was in the ER, and now I'm in a boot.
Yeah. Craziness. As much as I respect jujitsu, I feel like it's just kind of like not for me. Just because no, I like it, but like say it came down to the point to where at a job previous to where we worked at,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was at another gym, and I had a guy trainer friend, and his girlfriend was a trainer there as well, and she practiced Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And then he didn't believe he thought he was just so massive that he could just take her, and then out of nowhere they're in some position to where she like popped something in his leg, and I was like, all right, we're at work, you guys. Like, this is not the time or place to be practicing that.
No, it's not. Let that be a PSA to you all.
Yep.
But luckily, there isn't a fracture, and it's not a like a full tear, so they think it's a partial tear.
Okay.
Because I have to go get an MRI soon. I'm waiting to get referred out and all the stuff in the back end. But I have a scooter, and my scooter's so cool. It has like a little basket, so I'm living the life.
Didn't I'm sorry. Wasn't it recently that you were on a scooter, or was that somebody else? Like
I mean,
last
this is
year?
the first time I've ever had a scooter. No, this is
Okay.
the first time I've been a boot. Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
yeah. I have
I feel like
crutches.
somebody last year at that job had a scooter, or the year before, so that's why it's like deja vu. I was like, I feel like Grace
Someone's
was
in.
on I was
Yeah,
on a
no, it wasn't
scooter.
me. It wasn't me.
Okay, all right.
That's
Well,
my week.
so game plan. We're going to do our normal spoiler free kind of, I don't want to say recap because the recap is going to be with the spoilers, but let's say spoiler
Review.
free feelings towards Wakanda Forever. What would you say?
Review.
Review.
Would that work? Sum it
I
up.
like it. I like it a lot. All right, go ahead and top us off. You know what I'm saying? Let's do it.
Oh God. Okay, so Wakanda Forever. I watched it last night. Wow. So this film had so much that it needed to do, right? Like I think approaching the film, the release, I was very anxious because you obviously want them to do really well, but you know the stakes, you know what they have to weave together. And all in all, I just want to say like I really, really loved the film. There were so many powerful, like captivating moments that I think are just like I can't wait to talk about them in detail.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they handled, you know, Chadwick Boseman's death and obviously his absence in the film, I think was done so well. And going into this, I really didn't have a lot of expectations just because, I mean, I don't want to like toot my own horn. I have decent creativity, but like I genuinely couldn't like conjure any way for them to kind of write in his passing without it feeling like dismissive or you know, not really like holding how big that was for us, like the fandom, the world, his
Right.
family, etc. And I really think that they did it. Like I was very pleasantly surprised that they did it. I think justice because I feel like they really honor his memory, and not just in the beginning, not just in the end, but a lot throughout the entire film. You know, and I think the story that they built was really good. The introduction of, you know, a whole new civilization of people. And so all in all, I think the film was great. If you guys haven't seen it, watch it. Like I'm gonna watch it again tonight, and I'm
Out
really
today.
excited to do that.
Plug. It's out today. Go see it.
It's just it was wonderful. Like there are areas I feel like I have questions in regards to, but I think with the huge like the huge plate that this had, you know what I mean? Like they did it. Like they completed it, and I think that they did such a good job, and I'm very amazed.
Okay. All right. So, is it on me?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
it's on you.
Perfect. All right. So,
Take us
I was
home.
just making sure we're good. I would say this is like I kind of went into this movie wondering where it was going to land in terms of so in 2018 when the first Black Panther came out, it was the highest grossing solo Marvel film before Infinity War. So with that being said, I know like in terms of like grossing in the box office, as far as Phase 4 and on, as far as the saga, I think Spider-Man is going to be really tough to beat. I don't want to count Spider-Man as a solo film, even though it technically is, but there were like 3 Spider-Man and so many other cameos just made it big as it is. But as far as this movie was like you said, it was a really great story. I feel like my experience, I honestly could have been better. And I'm not talking as far as the movie. I'm now kind of talking about the movie theater. And like there were some moments while we were watching it. There were some scenes kind of playing at night while they're kind of, let's say, chilling at the beach. We'll get into it later. But say the theater that we're in, it was like super dark to the point to where I could barely see the actors on screen. So I was a little bothered at that, but it didn't really like, and I've seen
Where the hell
pictures.
did you go?
I went to an AMC, and I've seen pictures from that scene on like the Black Panther Instagram, to where you see the mom and Shuri. The mom has her fro out and holding a spear, where it looks super clean on in the picture, but like the theater that we in, it just looks super dark. And then it came down to the point to where I think say my girlfriend was just talking about, I think we may have gotten spoiled with the TV that we have. It may be too crisp, too clear. We may be bougie on on regular movies. Like, it may have to be to the point to where now AMC's, they're doing some, it's not IMAX, but it's like some type of like laser type of, I don't know, clarity. We may be doing that from here on out. We can't just watch things in regular definition anymore. But as far as the movie great. Like you said, they respected just the, I would say, the image of Chadwick Boseman throughout the whole film, even up to the end. Like, from start, they gave us something which I don't know if Marvel put it out as far as the intro. We'll talk about it later. And then the movie kind of ended in a post-credit scene with a good Chadwick Boseman kind of send-off. So I really liked it, and would it's like, as far as S tier, I don't know. I would definitely for sure 100% put it in the A tier. I'm not sure if I would put it S tier though.
And you know something, I feel like that's still saying a lot, just because like they had so much to do. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I feel like we talked about it so briefly. Like I was really like, how are they gonna do it? You know,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just, it's like not even the fans, I think, have put too much input of how they wanted it to be done, because it's like we don't even know how to begin to try to weave these things together that they were able to do really well, you know. So
Yeah.
and kind of like what you mentioned, like Black Panther, like it wasn't just a great film, like it beat out so many others. And so you're also having to follow something like that. And you know, they had so many obstacles just getting this into the theaters. It's like they had so many delays. Like I
Mm-hmm.
told you, I had someone on the set who's just like, yeah, we're shut down again, and we're shut down again, and we're shut down again. Like, this guy was stuck in Atlanta for like a year. You know.
Right, and
um,
didn't Shuri, like, she like broke a leg like doing a stunt too, so like they had to hold off for
She
her to
was
heal
injured.
up.
I don't know if it was like she broke a leg, but I know she was injured, and there was like so many things. And obviously, like, you know, I think this started filming. Was it 2020?
Uh,
It was like,
I would say either maybe late 2020 or early 2021, because I remember it was earlier last year. For when we got news of like the injury, it could have been maybe even spring of last year. But
sure, yeah.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it like, I don't know. It was a very rocky road to get to the release, and I think that for everything that they had to kind of go through, all the things that they had to do in this film,
Yeah.
I stand on that A tier. That's, I
I
think, a good score.
And I think one thing I want to put before we even actually dive into the spoilers, I am so glad that I'm looking up the actor's name. Wakanda Forever. All right. So I'm glad that when it came down to it, they chose, I think it's pronounced Tenoch Huerta as Namor. Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Okay. All
I
right.
assume.
Well, all right. Well, he's the person who plays Namor, or they say Namor. That's how they pronounce it, I think, in there. But initially, I don't know if you read this a couple years ago, as far as when they were finding actors to play Namor. It was initially going to go to I forgot this actor's name, but he was in one of the Fast and the Furious, maybe like Fast Six. He was like Jason Statham's brother or some shit, and he was supposed to play Namor. But I'm definitely glad they pushed him out to the side. Ryan Coogler was like, "No, we're actually gonna go another route, like a more authentic route. We're not gonna put some English guy in Aztec, an Aztec get up,
Fair.
and then call
Yeah.
him Namor, just because." As far as looks, he looks similar to what the character looks like in the comics, which I get. You initially at first glance he looks like that, but they did a good job, and I think I even said it at the end of this movie. Marvel, in terms of staying true to different cultures and cultural diversities, and all the projects that they're putting that they've been putting out in this phase, uh, they stay true here. They got a legit Aztec descendant, and what and like I respect Marvel for that. I think so. Good job. Appreciate it. Feige, good job. Yep.
For your approval, man.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that the casting was done so well. And I feel like because they did take a little bit of a different approach when it comes to Namor story, everything like that. It did turn into something very unique, and I think that it allowed them to kind of encompass like Aztec Mayan culture
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I think kind of pairs well with what they were able to do with like Wakanda. You know what I mean? And so I think this is such a great film for like diversity, period. The casting was done so well, and I think that it's kind of just a continuation off of a lot of the projects that Marvel has been doing um, very well in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think that may be it for right now in terms of spoiler free. Are you ready to dive on in?
Yes,
All
let's do
right,
it.
spoiler
Oh, I love
warning.
that pun. We're diving in.
We're diving in. So spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen it, exit right here, right now, because everything you hear from this point forward, you're gonna be bummed because we're gonna we're gonna talk about anything and everything. So starting from the beginning. The beginning of the movie starts off with I was surprised because initially, of course, I had the predictions that we would see some hint of Chadwick and or even like a flashback or whatnot to how he died or whatnot. But this movie kind of it started off right, pretty much at the death. We don't see him, but we're finding out that uh, he's having was like was it was a heart disease. It was heart disease or something like that.
No, I don't think they said heart disease specifically. They said like an illness
Oh,
because,
okay.
he had, like, I don't know if they used the word disease, but like an illness, that he was suffering from in silence. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And from there, initially I didn't know what Shirley was trying to make with the 3D printer. It just didn't work. Like she got her calculations and it was like a 28% chance, and I honestly thought it was just I don't know some type of medicine.
Right.
Because if we were to, because initially later on in the movie we find out that she was trying to print off another heart shaped herb, but my thoughts on that would be being that he already has the heart shaped herb that makes him the Panther. Why would he need more? So that's why I didn't really think that she was printing out another herb.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess like looking at it now, like it kind of does make sense, right? Because if he's like dying, right? We're talking about like, T'Challa and Black Panther, like he's dying because of this illness. This could give him enough like extra power to kind of make him like live, similar to how we
Mm-hmm.
see in Black Panther with him basically clinging onto life in a coma, and then they give him the heart-shaped herb there. I
Mm-hmm.
think it does make sense afterwards, but yeah, in the moment I would have just assumed, and I did just assume that it was like some
Something.
remedy, some other
Right.
remedy. Yeah, but it does
Mm-hmm.
make sense for it to be that because I mean, what other remedy would surpass what the heart shaped herb can provide? So, but as we see in the film, unfortunately, like it was at a 28%
Mm-hmm.
success rate. She was willing to just roll the dice on those odds, but ultimately, it's Queen Ramonda that comes in and gives the news that unfortunately he didn't make it. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. How do you feel in terms of like you may have mentioned it earlier, just now, but how do you feel as far as this send off?
I think that I really do like the way that they did this because I think there's a sensation of I don't know if I'm using the right word. But I'm just gonna say that it's like the speed at which this happened. You know what I mean? Because I think for a lot of us, that's how it felt when the news hit.
Mm-hmm.
Just because no one knew this was happening, like we didn't know that he was, fighting cancer. None of that. Like we didn't know that at all. And so I think that that's something that's very parallel to I think how the world felt about his passing. It was
Mm-hmm.
just very sudden. And I think that that kind of rings true in this initial scene. And I love how as it continues and they do briefly kind of talk about T'Challa and how was suffering in silence and he had this illness. I like that this allowed them to have those conversations, speaking about T'Challa, but you can easily just say they're talking about Chadwick Boseman, you know?
Can I ask you, being that they didn't really dive into the cause, they just said it was just an illness or whatnot. Do you think the door is open to a super soldier killer?
In what do you
Like,
mean?
because
Explain that a little bit
initially the heart shaped herb has pretty much made T'Challa into the Black Panther, which is another version of a super soldier, like the Wakandan
Oh,
version of a
sure.
super
Yeah, yeah,
soldier,
yeah.
right? So we don't know anything about any weaknesses of super soldiers based off of everybody that we've seen from Bucky and Steve Rogers and everything like that. Um, so what if there's somebody out there that developed something to the point to where they used it on T'Challa first. It attacked the heart, and then he's gone. And then later on in this saga, I'm really just kind of speculating, throwing out ideas. But do you think this could just be a possibility?
I mean, I feel like I don't feel like they would use this as like an anchoring up to say something someone was targeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
T'Challa. Um, just because I think it would like lessen the way that they presented his death in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like they might just leave it as is. Like just understanding that there was an illness that was apparently strong enough to, even with the strength of the heart-shaped herb, like weaken him to the point that he ended up passing away.
So
And I think also because we don't necessarily need an explanation in a sense, and so that's why I don't think they're going to continue more storyline off of it. But
yeah,
I do see what you're saying, because the reality is like, I mean, it's like seeing Cap or Bucky, develop some illness and then get sick. Like we don't really see that have happened
right.
before. So I can see what you mean in terms of like maybe there's going to be more explanation behind it. But I feel like they would just kind of leave it as is. Like I think I would prefer it if they just leave it as is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with it, and if they leave it as is, then we are just it's safe for us to assume as a viewer that the heart shaped herb, it doesn't heal all. There is a possibility that as a panther, you can die from certain illnesses.
Sure. Or yeah, sure. Or even, and I think it is a valid thing to ask, especially because we have like the super soldier serum having been kind of a prevalent storyline in this phase, right? It comes up so often. I think it's a fair kind of question to make, right? Because if you're looking at it from the perspective of just like the world we're discussing, it's like, okay, this would be kind of huge. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was an illness that took down the Black Panther. Like, what is this illness? Like, should other super soldiers be concerned of this? So I do see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just throwing that out there. It's not real, y'all. I was just asking questions.
As we
it's
do
not.
here.
That's not
As
part of the
we
movie.
do
I
here.
promise.
No, but I think ultimately, like this scene was done really well, and it felt quick. You know what I mean? It felt
Mm-hmm.
quick, but I think that, like I said, resonates really well with how that news felt for all of us. And I think that that's very genuine to just honoring his memory. And I think what they do after this scene as well, or just beyond the scene in this movie, I think add to it. So I'm really content with how that um, came about. And I think from here we get.
Wait. Before we move forward,
Mhm.
I do wanna mention one thing that I was a little bit disappointed in, just a little bit. Even though it's minute, it's something that we've talked about in the past. This movie, the way the movie opened up, it was uh it was a black screen, and Shuri, she says a prayer to Bast, right? So with that, I'm thinking we're gonna at least get a Bast cameo, being a cameo, and
Oh,
it's like
fancy.
being that we did get Bast in Thor: Love and Thunder. That's one thing that I was hoping we were gonna get here, but we didn't. So Like,
I
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm actually so happy you mentioned that because I forgot that I did want to talk about that opening scene because, we have like the screen is in black and we hear Shuri's voice, and it's very similar to Black Panther where the screen is black and we hear a young Killmonger talking to his dad. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so it opens very similar, it has that parallel, but on top of it, like with what she's actually saying and talking to Boss, like, if you save my brother, I'll actually believe in you and I'll actually believe in what goes beyond that. And I feel like that sets kind of the precedent of this film when it comes to Shuri and her story, because she's very much like technology based and science based, so she doesn't actually believe a
She's not
lot of like,
spiritual. Yeah.
yeah, very similar to Chadwick, oh my god, but T'Challa in Civil War, right, when he's talking to Natasha Romanoff, saying like, this is the belief of my people, but I don't believe this, and obviously he goes through his own journey in Black Panther, and when he sees the ancestral plane, all those things, like there's no doubt about it for him. But here, like, Shuri is very science based, and so I think that this very brief kind of moment before the film really really starts, I think sets that pacing for the whole film, because it becomes important, like it keeps reoccurring, because she doesn't allow herself to grieve really until the very end of the film, so I think I liked what that served. In terms of Bast itself, I think we both thought we were going to see an appearance, especially being that we did see her in Thor Love and Thunder, primarily kind of to see if that's how we would get another heart-shaped herb,
Mm-hmm.
but being that that was served somewhere else, using her technology,
Yeah.
it's I think I'm okay with it, but I feel like this means we're gonna see her in Black Panther 3.
You hope. I feel like that was just honestly maybe like a wasted opportunity to where we may not even get that actress in an MCU film ever again, because they made it such like such an announcement just even by sitting them right in front of Thor and Mighty Thor and Valkyrie. It was like, okay, so we actually do have the Panther Goddess right here, and then Black Panther Wakanda Forever comes. We don't have a herb because Killmonger burned it all off. Why not bring Bast into the shits?
Yeah, and that is exactly what we thought was going to happen. And the story took a completely different turn.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there's still hope for her to come back in. I mean, we've lived through longer threads, you know what I mean, that haven't been tied. Like this one might just be one that we're gonna have to wait for until Black Panther 3. You know?
Okay. All right. I'm with it. Um. All right. Take us from where we left off.
So we do get into the funeral scene, and the funeral scene, we have this casket for T'Challa, and it has basically him in like the Black Panther mantle, and everyone's in white because for Wakandans, death is not the end of things, right? It's the beginning of another life, and so for them, it's a celebration. And there's murals of T'Challa in the background, and I feel like it looks so similar to the murals that we have of Chadwick Boseman, because a lot of murals came around just all over the world after his passing,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think it's those little details that allow you to not just use this to obviously, a send off for T'Challa as a character in the
Mm-hmm.
MCU, but also a send off for Chadwick Boseman as the first Black Panther to, grace us in cinematic form.
Yeah. Um. I think because from there we saw a majority. I don't want to say a majority of that funeral in the commercial, but we kind of got the general gist of it. I thought it was cool that they sent off the casket the way it did. Because initially the casket was laying down, and then one of the Wakandan ships flew up above, and I didn't know they had, let's say, quote unquote tractor beams. I thought that was like some borderline Star Trek type stuff. I wasn't expecting to see that here, but they were able to pretty much beam up the casket to the point to where from laying down position it came to upright, and when it did, everyone did the Wakanda cross, you know what I'm saying? And just to salute as the ship just took the casket away, and I thought that was pretty cool.
It was good. It was a really beautiful scene, and I think that I feel like you see so many different things just in that like snippet. Like obviously you see like the performers like, and they're smiling because this is a joyous thing. Like someone just entered like the ancestral plane and has it's now with the ancestors and all these things, because they have this kind of a beautiful view when it comes to death. But you also see like the faces of Queen Ramonda and Shuri, who I don't know, I feel like it shows kind of like the spectrum of grief in a sense. But I feel like this scene, we saw it in the trailer,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of knew what it was going to serve as, because we obviously knew that they were going to have to address the death somehow.
Right.
And I think it's just the piece of that like sticks with me really is like Shuri holding on to the mask of the
Mm-hmm.
Black Panther. Like, I just think that was so beautifully done. Like, I think this film, very much like the original, is so visually like just beautiful and appealing in
Yeah.
all of the scenes that we can kind of see. And then the same goes for as we move into looking at where Namor's from and all of that. But I think that's as much as I got from this intro scene.
So, moving on from the funeral, cause from there, does it time travel? Not necessarily time travel, but do we skip a year from the funeral?
Yes, so from the year we skip a year, and when we get that year jump, we have. Do we go straight into the council? Is that what it is?
No, we go straight into the ocean, with the people mining vibranium in the ocean.
Do we?
Yeah, or
Oh,
they're well,
okay.
like there's a tactical team that's attempting to, and then they meet the Dora on like the rig, and then the Dora bring these people to the UN or wherever that council is.
Oh, because they're at the okay. Well, they're at the what is it called? The one of like the bases that like Wakanda made like throughout the world, right? I think this one's specifically based in France.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't mining vibranium
Right,
at that
right,
that
right,
base.
right.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Just making
yeah. I
okay,
was
okay, cool.
mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, so that's where it is. So they're trying to pluck like the resources from the Wakandans, which is like the vibranium. Okay, cool. Okay. And
Yeah.
that's what kind of bleeds into the council room. But yeah, so this scene, we saw snippets of it also in the trailer, and we
Mm-hmm.
did talk about it. Like, I think the way that the story turned was very like you can kind of expect it going that way, because the last film ended with them opening their doors to the world, saying that we want to help with our resources, etc. And now
Mm-hmm.
here we see the exact thing that T'Chaka warned T'Challa about. That like these are resources that people shouldn't have, and that they will go after you if they know what this is, in
Mm-hmm.
the full strength of Wakanda. And so that's exactly what we see this film like start off with, really. And it goes back and forth from this into the scene in the court or in the council, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they are criticizing Queen Ramonda and like their promise that they would, provide resources, and they're talking about how vibranium can be used for weapons of mass destruction, so therefore they shouldn't be the ones responsible for it, et cetera, et cetera. And
I like what she
Queen
said right
Ramonda.
there. Yeah, like her statement, her opening statement is just like it's not worried about like the vibranium. It's more so worried about the people trying to use the vibranium. Like it was like kind of on that basis.
She left no crumbs.
Mm-hmm.
She like like I can't wait to watch this tonight just to relive all of Queen Ramonda's like speeches in this entire film, because this was just the start off, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I'm not afraid of, like you said, like of the like the potential of like vibranium. It's like it's what you guys do with it, and
Mm-hmm.
basically like because they're essentially being like, why aren't you giving us these things that you promised? And she's just like, you guys aren't worthy. Basically.
Well, let's say if these little Wakandan bases weren't attacked, do you think that Wakanda would be more open to giving vibranium?
Well, I don't know if like the idea was for them to give them the vibranium. Period. I think it was more so for them to be facilitators to help other nations develop things
Mm,
like that. You know what I mean? And so I don't think the objective of like say T'Challa in the first movie was to be like, here guys, here's all our vibranium, but
gotcha.
more so like to be active participants in the world and be part of like you know, I think just that like facilitating growth in these different countries, like the underdeveloped countries, like kind of going back and forth in that kind of idea, which they really didn't do before, right? There
Mm,
wasn't really that kind of engagement because, they didn't want to be involved in any of those things. So I think, and then I think it's like this, it's kind of like you give them an inch and they ask for more. That's kind of exactly what they do. And it's exactly what they, like the reason that they kept those walls up for many years, you know?
Right. I think initially I left the first Black Panther thinking that that was actually going to be the case of, yes, them opening the doors. I'm thinking that they were going to share their resources in terms of vibranium, and then they didn't really kind of dive into it when it was in Infinity War, like when T'Challa was kind of having that conversation with Dora, and she was just like talking about maybe bringing in like a Starbucks or something like that. But like, yeah, coming into this movie, I think we even discussed it before. I thought it was just going to be a matter of Wakanda already kind of at this point, at this juncture, uh, letting the world in on vibranium. But then I was thinking that there was just going to be an unknown superpower that, you know, abuses the vibranium, if you kind of get what I'm saying.
Sure. And I mean, there is an unknown superpower that uses vibranium, but it's like, it's not in that same context, right? It's like
Right.
they have their own, like, source of vibranium, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of like shatters the lore of Wakanda in a sense, you know. And I think it's Okoye who says it, like, this messes with all the stories that I ever heard as a child, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we do end up getting that, but just in a very different turn. But I think that this scene was so perfect because I feel like it might be something that gets continued in, say, the next Black Panther film,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to just like the rest of the world trying to get the resources of Wakanda, and then ultimately also, what's the name of the land? I've been like skipping on it because I haven't had it. Oh, Talokan,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think kind of like what you're saying, I feel like that might be actually like the main storyline of like the next film, because this film, although it starts off with this conversation of like the other, you know, great powers of the world trying to take or have vibranium, like have the rights to vibranium,
Mm-hmm.
it really becomes like a B storyline, you know. Like we still see some of it, especially with like Val and like the CIA, but it's kind of in the back burner, you know. Like the main storyline is kind of the conflict between Wakanda and Talokan. So I feel like exactly like what you're talking about will probably be like the main premise of like the next film, you know?
Yeah, and now that you mentioned Val, I'm finally glad that we get a title. Like so far, she's been in the shadows, which honestly, that's all CIA is just like in the shadows or whatnot. So now it's established that Val is the director of the CIA. So I'm kind of glad they made that clear. It's like who,
Director Fury. You know, it's
right?
just
Yeah.
it was well, the moment they said it, I was like chills, because all of us have been comparing her to Nick Fury for so
Mhm.
long,
Mhm.
because she's the only real constant apart from Wong in like a lot of these projects,
Right.
that you can kind of see them pulling together to create teams for this next phase that's gonna follow.
Mhm.
And so I think it fits so well that it's the last project for phase 4 for us to finally get her exact title. Like I think that was cool. Like I like that they held that out until now. And you know, we learned that she's the head of the CIA. We learned that she's the ex-wife of what's his name, Agent Ross,
Yeah. 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 Mhm.
which I thought was funny. But just because we're talking about her right now, when it comes to Val, I liked this appearance of her more than the others because she was more like human. Like I think in the others she shows up like such a super villain type
Mhm.
vibes, you know what I mean? And like and here I feel like because you see her also with like say Ross, who used to be her husband, there's a little bit more like, I don't want to say civilian, but you get her a little bit more as a civilian versus the one that's trying to, you know, get U.S. agent and get Yelena Belova and things like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think with that, honestly, I just think that's a front for her to bring Ross's kind of guard down. Being that, of course, he's in the CIA as well. Um, I think it was just more so her trying to act more so human was just a ploy to get more information on what's going on with Wakanda.
I mean, I'll take it because she planted the bug at the
Mm-hmm.
very start, very well knowing that he was gonna end up with it,
Mm-hmm.
and very well knowing that he was gonna end up having these conversations with Queen Ramonda and things like that too. So yeah, I think you're right. Regardless, whether it was a friend or not, I feel like it made me feel a little bit more connected with her than in
Mm-hmm.
previous films, and I actually like her more out of because of this. You know,
Wow.
like with all of that included. Like I just think she's like I'm excited to see her versus before she was kind of like the boogeyman in the background, you know?
I think she's still the boogeyman. Like, say if we're gonna talk directors, I feel like her versus Nick Fury. I think Nick Fury is gonna come out to be the most human of the two, to where I think honestly CIA was it's like no matter what, it's always shady. Like
It's
in
always
every
like,
movie, there's always like a bad director or something, you know. So I like being that she is now kind of putting these thunderbolts together. It's going to be entertaining to watch, but I think at the end of the day, she's still someone to where maybe even eventually down the line, she's not gonna be the quote unquote hero like Nick Fury looking out for the greater good of the nation. I think she just maybe has alternative motives with the Thunderbolts, and she kind of proved her point here with Everett Ross.
she's kind of like Amanda Waller. Like I think she's more Amanda Waller than Nick Fury, but they all serve in like a very similar rank. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
We're the directors and coordinators of these like super powered individuals. So yeah, like I think I will still say like I think this film like made me like her more.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just felt like see her in more of a civilian stance versus just in like the trench coat walking up being like, we need a US agent. Like I don't know, you know what I mean? Like there's the facade wasn't there as much, but also she used a different facade, right? Her civilian facade to
Mm-hmm.
gain like this level in espionage, which is very tailored for like the CIA. So all overall, like I liked her appearance in this film,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I don't disagree. I think that like I don't think that she will serve the same thing that Nick Fury served in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
That Nick Fury served beyond what say like Shield was meant for, you know, like and I think that Val is a little bit more like cutthroat in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, you know, and
Yep.
so I think in that sense she's a lot closer to an Amanda Waller than Nick Fury. Not sure by how much, but definitely a little bit more on that end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to think where we left off because we started talking about Val. Okay, so posts like say in the UN, Queen Ramonda, she kind of made it clear that resources weren't or aren't going to be shared by Wakanda, and she brought back the soldiers that invaded the Wakandan base just to prove like these were y'all, these are your folks, you know, like it's like y'all tried and failed, and now I'm keeping my vibranium. That's what I got from that whole that whole conversation.
It was just so good. It was like, you guys are not worthy. Nice
Mm-hmm.
attempt, guys. Here, I
Mm-hmm.
just, you know, it's just like, and also the scene where like, you know, they, you know, command like the scientists to open where they have like vibranium, and
Mm-hmm.
it's open, and then it's just like a shadow, and emerging from like the darkness is like the Dora Milaje, like yeah, it's like in the theater, I was like freaking out, like this was so cool. And then paralleling that with then the scene with Queen Ramonda, which I think just gives such a very similar, like captivating, like powerful hold. Like it's just I love this scene. Like I'm telling you, I can't wait to go back just because I want to watch this scene again. You know?
She had to make it clear. Like she said it. She was just like, listen, yes, the king is dead, but we're not weak, and here go your shoulders. You know, here go your boys, because we still got we still got our people. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I loved about it. It was just like a strong moment just to say that without the Panther, Wakanda is still Wakanda, and you can't sleep on that.
100%,
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I think moving from here, you know, we get to kind of one of the bit where I think all of these stories kind of tie up because um there's like a ship,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where they're trying to kind of detect vibranium in the ocean, which
Yeah.
they do.
Hmm.
And, they are all assuming that they're getting attacked by the Wakandans, but they're actually not. They're getting attacked by, what do you call the people of Talokan? Will we just say the people of Talokan? That's what we will
I
say.
was
They're getting
surprised that they
attacked.
weren't called Atlanteans, you know?
Oh my god. So like, okay, just you set it off. So like Namor and all of this was changed so much from the origins in the comics. In a way that I think I love so much because it really blended like Aztec and Mayan culture. Just like I think like the Mesoamerican era
Hmm.
period.
Hmm.
But it originally like the storyline is like, Namor is an Atlantean. And it's actually kind of like Aquaman. Like it's like his mother was like a princess of like Atlantis. She fell
Hmm.
in love with someone else. They had the child, but eventually her father sent in the troops, and like it's very much the same. Like this is like the origins, as like Aquaman, but for obvious reasons they had to change it. The Aquaman did really well. It was established way before this film came out, and so then I think they needed to change the story a
Hmm.
lot just so it didn't seem so repetitive. And they changed it in a way that it's like doesn't even mirror Aquaman's story at all. And I love this so much more.
Right. Right.
So they did a great job. Like I don't like I think this is one of like the biggest kind of changes when it comes to origins that we've seen in a little bit. And I think it's one of those that they did really good.
Hmm.
That's why they're not the Atlanteans. They blended it with the people of like Talocan, which is actually like a place in Aztec lore
Hmm.
where people who die of like lightning or drowning go to rest in paradise.
Yeah. So from that scene with the boat, we're seeing that there's a situation to where there's the technology to detect vibranium, um, which is I would say this is an important point in this movie because that was pretty much I guess the reasoning for the rest of the movie happening, and then to then once the I don't want to say were they Americans or it doesn't matter. Once these people dove into actually see what it was and see if it is vibranium, then the people started going missing, and then coming to find out, uh, these you said Talocans, is that how they're pronounced?
Mm-hmm.
These Talocans, they have I guess a beautiful singing voice. You know what I'm saying? They can harmonize some hums, and with those hums they are able to hypnotize anybody who's in the vicinity, and I guess get people to walk to their deaths, which I think it would have been cooler if they were able to do something else, but it just seems like the hums were just like walking to the ocean. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
No, like and I kind of disagree because it's like I love that they blended this. I didn't expect it to be so, but I think them being like people of legend, like people of the sea, mer people, Atlantis. I think something that kind of aligns with that too is like sirens of the sea, right? Where they would
Mm,
lure, like ships to like their death and things like that too. So I feel like this blends a lot of like lore that comes from the
mermaids and
ocean
stuff
because
like
we
that,
don't really. What was that?
like mermaids and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's like that's kind of synopsis with that. When you think like Atlantis, you can think like mermaids and mer people and all these things. And so I love that they blended it into that. So it's kind of like you can trace this back way back when, from
Mm-hmm.
like where those like that mythology comes from. And so I thought it was really cool that they blended that as part of one of the things that they can do.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. I didn't expect it.
It was totally unexpected because I'm thinking initially, once the people that were underwater deep diving, once they started to disappear, I was like, okay, it's just going to be an obvious attack. But it wasn't really on that. It was just everybody hypnotized by the hums walked into the ocean. And then for the few people that were left, uh, they were taken care of by Namor. Like initially, we thought that these were just going to be people at sea. But once the helicopter kind of took into the air, that's where we see uh, a slight glimpse of Namor, like kind of twirl this helicopter around. That shows us that A, he has super strength, and B, that he can fly. And we could see that he could fly a little bit in the trailer, but we didn't know how it was going to look. And later on in the movie, I think to me, I think I was a little worried as far as how it looked, but I think it just made sense later on.
Yeah, it looked good. I feel like it's easy for us to maybe come off as goofy. Like you got wings on your ankles, bro. Like that can come off really
Right.
like not, but it did. Like I think, and also I feel like it's very balanced because I feel like Namor has such like like he's so powerful, he's so strong. Like look at his freaking like traps, dude. Like he just is so commanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like my I'm just gonna bring in Aquaman. It's kind of like Aquaman. It's like he has a very like bright and funky looking costume, but
Mm-hmm.
you slap that on what's his name, who's the actor who plays Aquaman?
Jason Momoa.
You slap that on Jason Momoa and it doesn't matter. It looks badass. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like the same case. I think it just blends really well with the character, and that's what you see. You see like Namor.
Mm-hmm.
And so like just to kind of clarify, like this was like the CIA, like this was the American operatives, because I think it's Ross that makes a comment to Shuri down in the movie that
Right.
he lost two people that he was close friends with. Like we haven't heard from them again.
Mm-hmm.
And hold on, I wonder if we're going to see them again. The only reason I say that is because that one woman who was on like the plane, I mean obviously got torn apart, so safe to assume she could be dead.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the actress that does voice for Poison Ivy in the TV show, and she's kind of like a known actress. So I was wondering, like, I don't think they would just use her
Known
for
for
something
playing
small.
Poison Ivy.
I think so. Hold on, like I think she voices Poison Ivy. I think so. I haven't fact checked myself, but I'm pretty sure.
Let's see.
But what I'm saying is that she's, regardless, like this actress, I've seen her in a couple of things, and so I thought it was weird for them to show her and then not, and then like for her to seemingly be dead. Like I wonder if she did survive and we're gonna see her again, just because the actress is known. Like whether it is the one who does the voice for Poison Ivy or not, like she's a known actress. So I wonder if we are gonna see that actress come back, because we do know from what Ross says that she does have connections with Ross, and I just wonder if anything's gonna add up there.
It's like I remember seeing her face, and I'm trying to find her on IMDb. I just wish I knew her name because I've seen her in other stuff, but I don't even know if like I think it. I don't know. Leaving that scene, I would just assume that
It's
Namor
Lake
take her out
Bell.
of there.
Lake Bell.
Is it?
That's the actress, and she plays Dr. Graham. And just I'm just gonna see if maybe there's anything on Dr. Graham that would give us like a little bit of an insight on that.
Lake Bell. Why does that name sound so familiar? Because it's a weird name. It's not like a normal. Right. She's out of here. She's she's gone. I'm sorry. Yeah, from what I've seen her in, she's always played like a B role. It's never really been like on some major.
No, but this wasn't even a B role. This was like a D role. Like she, like you know what I mean? It's like I feel like if they weren't planning to use her again for something, they would have just given that role to anybody if it wasn't going to be continued. So I just feel like she is like a known actress. I feel like she might come back in a different B plot later, is what I'm saying. And I haven't looked at like the doctor that she plays, but because she is Dr. Graham, but I don't really know much beyond that. The only Dr. Graham I can think of is the one that's kind of involved with like Thor's origins, but it doesn't seem like that's the one that she's playing.
Okay.
But I'm just curious. I wonder if we're gonna see her again.
Okay. From there, where do we leave off? We left off on the rig. Oh, and how do we find out there is a detector, a vibranium detector? Was that Ross in the woods, or was that somewhere else?
No. Okay. So we first see this detector being used by the CIA here in this scene, which is what drew the people of Telecon to them, right? And then the next mention we have of it is when Namor interrupts this moment that Queen Ramonda is having with Shuri,
right?
Just in discussion of kind of being able to grieve, and so then when he approaches them, he makes them aware that there is this object that can detect vibranium, and that there are people trying to mine it, like basically as we speak.
Yeah.
And at first, Queen Ramonda was like, impossible, like we are the only ones who've ever had vibranium. And then Shuri shows her like, mom, like he's
He's
covered in
covered
it.
in it. Yep.
Yeah. And so he brings the issue to her, right? Because this is a problem that they both face, right? Now that there is this technology that can detect vibranium, it's one step closer for people to be able to mine it, because now they know the location and they can, get it. So that's where we kind of get that connection. And we later learn that the creator of this vibranium detector is Riri Williams. I'm so dehydrated that no words
No
are coming
worries.
out.
So what's funny is, like, say the next scene when the Queen and Shuri they bring this to the Council of Wakanda and let them know that there's a scientist out there that has made a vibranium detector, and let them know that there's another place that has vibranium. Uh, the guy that I mentioned before, as far as like, who told me about the Midnight Angels, he was actually in the scene, and it was kind of cool just to see him on screen. I was like, look, there he is. He was just back in the background as part of, like, one of the tribes, like, head people. So I thought that was actually pretty cool seeing him on screen.
Oh yeah, you were telling us last week that you were excited to see him.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really cool.
Initially, I didn't think I was gonna see him because he's a stuntman, but he didn't do any stunts, or he maybe did some stunts, but the scene that we saw him in, it was just on some. He was just standing there, like, he actually just played a role of, like, a background person. So I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
That is pretty cool, especially like on a film like this. Like I feel like you could play, I don't know, someone cleaning a toilet, but if you're in the Black Panther movie, you're just like, I did it, mom.
Look at
I'm
that.
there.
Check it out.
So let alone be able to be in like the Grand Council with all the like with the elders, etc. Like that's pretty dope. That's pretty damn cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so Queen Ramonda brings the issue to the Grand Council, or like to all the elders, because this is a big thing. Like people can now find where vibranium is. And in addition to that, there's this whole other group of people whose livelihood is also off of vibranium, and they
Right.
come from the ocean. And also they're like, wow, like Namor just went past our defense systems like nothing, not detected at any point. And they do have, like, I think it's part of like the river tribe, right? Because they're manning that sector of like the border. They're like, he never came on our radar at all. So this is very concerning for them.
It should be, just because, yeah, they may have a river tribe, but I don't even know if the river tribe is, let's say, quote unquote, like a navy. I don't know if it's like they should, being that they're top tier technology when it comes to vibranium. They should be able to detect anything that's underwater, even if they're on the surface level. But yeah, it should be concerning now that someone is able to just swim right by. It's not even like they were on a boat. They swam up to the Queen and Shuri on a beach. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives Queen Ramonda this like conch shell, and basically when she has an answer for him, like to bring it, and then they go forward like that. But what was it that his proposition was? I think he said, oh, like to deliver the scientist, right? That's what he wanted
Yeah.
initially.
Mm-hmm.
And so they do hunt down the scientist, right? And it's Okoye, Shuri, just the two of them, right? Go to kind of retrieve Riri.
Yeah.
Yep, and they go to MIT.
Mm-hmm. Continue. Keep going.
Oh, there is something. The alma mater of Tony Stark. So
Oh, I
it's
missed that. I didn't put two and two together.
yes. And so, and like Tony Stark like created his first AI back at MIT, and then you have Riri Williams who created her first basically like Iron Man suit also at MIT. And so there's a lot of parallels to the characters that you can kind of draw throughout, and I think this is one of them. They went to the same school.
Yeah. Say initially when they went to go get her, and all the excitement of knowing that Riri was actually in this movie, she turned out to be one of the, I guess the funnier aspects of the film. You know, I wasn't really expecting. I didn't know what to expect with seeing her on screen, besides seeing her in her version of an Iron Man suit, or her version of it. But just at this intro with Okoye and her throwing, I think through a speaker, was about to throw a fan at her. Like it was just a funny moment, you know.
Oh, I love her. Like immediately you're just like, yes, I want to see her more. You
Mm-hmm.
know? And so obviously you get excited to see her in like the TV show that's gonna be coming out. But no, yeah, I think the actress did such a great job. Like she's such a lovable character already. Like she's severely talented.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think with her, she has such like I don't know the whole interaction between her and Shuri is so funny, and then on top of that, her and Okoye, and I love how Okoye was just like, I like her. You know, like even she says it kind of speaks for us, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And when they go into Riri's warehouse, like we kind of get a better idea of how smart she is, because of course we didn't really get much until like it's like, yeah, we know she's the inventor of the detector, but like this is her workshop. And then once the place is surrounded by the feds, you see she kind of peels off in her suit, which was badass, even though it wasn't complete like the complete suit that we got in at the very end. It could have been complete. That could have just been her version, just open face, you know. But I thought that was super cool, and just the following scene of the whole chase, I top notch. That's all I can really say. I can't
And
really
something that
describe
I
it any other.
loved
Yeah.
is where they when they were pulling her from her apartment. You know, when they tell her like, "Oh, we got to go to Wakanda," she's like, but I have class in like 10 minutes." You know, and it just reminds me so much of when Tony was recruiting Peter Parker, and he's like, "But I have school. I can't go to Germany." And it
Right.
was a parallel that I thought was cool because I think that this film does a lot um, to pay homage to the original film, but also to other little things from different parts of like the MCU. And I think this is one of them that I thought was really cool. And I think when it comes to Riri, her whole story, I think in this film can you can kind of draw parallels to Tony's because the first time that we see him fly his suit, it was like it was incomplete. It wasn't full. You know, it was like the Mark One. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
was just enough to get him out of the cave, and then from there, eventually get picked up by Rhodey, right?
Right.
And here it's like for her to escape, she built this. She had this ready to go. It's incomplete, but by the end of the film, we see them both appear in like their full suits, completed.
Let me ask you. Say after watching this movie, and especially after watching this scene, if Okoye was there, um, this is all hypothetical, but if Okoye was there when trying to capture Zemo, like because Zemo escaped in a bathroom, do you think like this scene in this movie was more so just to kind of make up, it's like, nah, you're not gonna catch me in the escape in the bathroom act, because Ree was just like, yo, I'm about to go use the bathroom, and then boom, Okoye comes out.
I mean, yeah, like like all of the Dora Milaje are just like a whole different level of efficiency when it comes to what they do. You know, so although it's like funny because it's like, okay, but how did she get there? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, she would find a way. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
like you don't even really question it. It's like, okay, well, I don't think there's another door to the bathroom. You saw that, you know, like there's only one window. There's only one window. Like, how did she do it? But you don't question it because it's like, no, she's a Dora Milaje dude. Like she found a way. Like
Mm-hmm.
so, I think that that's definitely the case.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like when I saw that, I was like, yeah, they learned from Zemo. It's like you can't let him go to the bathroom like that anymore.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, they
Yeah.
no.
But then yeah, follows the chase scene, and I can imagine this scene because say they all split up. You got Ree in the air, you got Okoye in a car, and then Shuri on a bike. I think if just by looking at the stunts of this is where I'd assume that the actress actually got hurt, and because from there I don't think she did anything too crazy. It just looked like, say her bike crashed and she went flying, and I can imagine this is where, I don't know, she twisted an ankle or something like that.
I mean, it could have been any of those days. I think it was the first day of them shooting with the bike scene is when something had happened,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a delay. And I don't think I think part of the delay also was that she was, I think, afraid to use the bike again, so that took a little
Oh,
while, you know.
true. True, true, true.
And so yes, but I mean, this is the series of scenes that whichever part that they shot it in, like any of these could have been where she got hurt because it was with the bike. Yeah.
That's what you know for sure.
Yes.
Oh
Facts.
wow, she's connected, folks. she.
um, and so here we get so they're on the bridge, and this is where we get the first like Wakanda versus the people of Talokan, you know? And
Right.
so we have Namora who is handling like the US operatives, and then we have Okoye going up against, I'm gonna get his name real quick. I think it's Atuma. And this is where like I started shaking for Wakanda because I mean, there's not very much you can think of when it comes to who surpasses the Dora Milaje when it comes to like, you know,
Hand to
street
hand.
level
Mm-hmm.
like people because they win all the time. You know, like the way that they talk about the Dora Milaje and the Falcon and Winter Soldier, like Bucky and Sam, it's like these are like S tier, you know, when it comes to
Definitely.
fighting. And so
Definitely.
for you to bring someone in who doesn't just like beat Okoye, but he plays with her was
True.
terrifying to me. Like that scene alone, I was like, shit. You know, like they're a force to be reckoned with. Like they're a genuine threat to Wakanda. And I think also you see that through Okoye, because I don't think Okoye's ever had to face something like that. And she's gone through freaking Thanos' army, you know?
Well, I mean, there's something to say to where, like, when it came down to just this scene in general, Okoye she took on she was 1v3 and she beat those three easily. So I think honestly this was maybe a situational type of situation because I can imagine uh yes, her being the warrior that she is, she may have met her match this go round, but then later on we see who wins at the end of the movie. But just this person, what's the guy's name?
Atuma?
Atuma. I just think he just happens to be just a badass warrior that not only had vibranium, but he had the one up of having superhuman strength. Because I believe every one of those people did have superhuman strength.
I think that is part of like their evolution. I think that's
Right.
part of their enhancement. Yeah. And I would still say like this is kind of a cool comparison to see this in, or at least have it be like the first like conflict between the two people because
Mm-hmm.
Okoye is like the general of the Dora Milaje, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And this is like the general of Namor's like kingdom.
Right.
And so I think that those two ranks like fall really well to kind of put face to face to see um kind of the potential of uh, Talokan and also how that goes up against Wakanda. And I think it's great that when we then get to revisit that at the very end of the film, you know. So I think that that was a good way for us to get that introduction between the two. And then also, I love that we got to revisit it just from the perspective of Okoye, who goes through her own journey in
Mm-hmm.
its entire movie, you know.
Right. And I think that comes to show just in comparison to the Dora versus uh, USA agent. Though he's a super soldier, he wasn't a super soldier at that time. That was actually the deciding factor
That was one of the exactly,
that
yeah.
made him want to become a super soldier. Okay, so never mind. I was gonna say Dora versus super soldier, but he's not. As opposed to this person, Atuma, he has taken the quote unquote their version of the heart shaped herb, which gives them their strength. You know, so I wouldn't even say she failed, even though the queen kind of made it seem that she did. Even though, all right, technically she lost Shuri, you know, but she did everything she could to try to save her, you know. So was the queen harsh? Maybe. Was it deserved? Maybe. But as far as what Okoye was up against, one against four or five of those people, there was nothing that she can do in that moment but just continue to fight.
And she did, and I think it's like part of it, it's like you see her own kind of like when she gets thrown into the water and she realizes that she lost Shuri, like she's already like beating herself for it. You know what I mean? Like she's in agony because she just lost the princess, and like Okoye has given her life to Wakanda. Like she put a spear to her husband's throat for Wakanda without question. You know, like she is ride or die. And so for her, I think it's kind of like the like I don't want to say it's like the overachiever in school, but it's kind of like they're already punishing themselves if they don't live up to that standard that they expect. So then once you go and then go in front of the queen, and then she really hounds on that with no mercy. I mean, like, I feel like this is such a pivotal point in Okoye's life. You know, like she got stripped of her title, stripped as a Dora Milaje, and then she was forced to end up just being a regular civilian. And obviously her story turned into something different towards the end, and I think that's going to set off, you know, did you say it's going to be a show?
No, I just said look out for the group, which ended up forming at the end of this movie. So
It's going to be a show. Like, I feel like it's going to, I would love that. You know, like, Okoye ends up becoming one of the, what's the name?
Midnight Angels.
Midnight Angels alongside Anika. And I think that that is such a cool dynamic duo. And I'm excited to see them because we're going to see them. Like, that's going to be a spinoff of something. You know what I mean? For sure. And I would love to see that. But yeah, Okoye goes through it. And I think that obviously like failing, you know, with her first confrontation with the people of Talokan was like a huge part of that. Like at least a catalyst for the rest of the events.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. I'm honestly thinking about just previous battles that we've seen with her on screen, and it's like we've seen her on Infinity War. We didn't really see too much in Endgame, but we've seen the Dora fight multiple times from Falcon and the Winter Soldier here. And has there been any other instance of the Dora in combat?
I mean, let's see. We didn't get to see it in Civil War.
Right.
We saw it obviously in Black Panther. We saw it in Infinity War, Endgame. I think all the ones that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But we saw them go up against like Bucky, and the fact that they easily basically knocked him down. You know what I mean? Like we've seen them go up against like super soldiers. We see them up go against like I think it was Okoye who took down not Proxima Midnight. Who's the other one I'm trying to think of? But one of the children of Thanos, like the really tall, slender one.
Right.
So they've gone up a lot against a plethora of foes, but I think that this one also it's like they never expected to see someone wielding vibranium, you know, and I think that it's shocking, and I think like Okoye said, like this dismantles all the things I've learned as a child, you know. So I think this really like hits Wakanda in many different ways. You know, they're no longer like the chosen people of to wield vibranium, etc. You know, like there's this whole other group of people who are also gifted with vibranium.
But it's like how you mentioned that and how she mentioned that as far as kind of shutting down like their history. I wouldn't even say it does that. Like yes, the meteor landed in Wakanda, and who's to say like even in that's from that meteor they get Boss, you know, and Boss shows them to the heart-shaped herb. I don't think it does anything to discredit the Wakandan history. It's just now the fact that there was another piece of that meteorite that landed in the ocean and kind of almost gave these people a similar situation with another deity, because I think it was another deity that led them to their herb and gave them their powers, you know. So
just like that, yeah. And I think that go ahead, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, just with that being said, I don't think any of the Wakanda should think, if anything, their history being discredited. That's all I was trying to say.
Oh, 100%. You know, but I think it's like you can so see like how that is like a wound to start off with, and I think it creates like that defensiveness against the people of Talokan, you know, because everything that they're saying is basically just it's changing what they thought in their history. You know, it doesn't change like the fact that like, dude, you guys still got vibranium. You guys are pretty damn cool, you know? But you can see why that like really shook Wakanda.
Yeah.
And I do love the parallels that these two like powers have, like the history, because these are two examples of kind of what would have happened if colonization didn't disrupt,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
their roots, right? Like in Africa with Wakanda, and then in Latin America with the people of Talocan. You know, like how society could have flourished if it weren't for like colonization. And so I think that that's the parallel that I feel like they did really well with, you know, in trying to maybe change the history from like the Atlanteans and Namor to the people of Talocan and Namor, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think that it's the parallels between the two that I think make me really enjoy this kind of take on the origin, you know. And it doesn't take away from Wakanda and how special Wakanda is, but you can kind of see how that was a little bit of a hook, a dagger to start off with, you know.
Yeah, but I think like how you just kind of phrased it right now, like now I'm kind of just imagining as if like um, even though Shuri jokes about it initially earlier in the film, talking about seeing her favorite colonizers, and it's like from that, and then hearing Namor say like his first visit to the Queen on the beach was just like on some. I never thought there was a place where the water was so great, the air was so clear, or whatnot, you
Yeah.
know. And then I can only imagine that, like, say if Africa wasn't or didn't have the history that it did in terms of colonization and slavery or whatnot, I can imagine that that is what would like Africa as a whole would have been like, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the what they speak of in the movie is very parallel to like real life, which is that, you know, they that the other powers of the world are looking to essentially like colonize, but for their resources, you know,
Yeah,
like that they have. And in this case, it's vibranium. And so I feel like I really like the way that they blended that into the story, you know,
yeah,
because I think it's a very significant part of both the histories.
yeah, definitely. So from this bridge, Shuri volunteers to go, just to keep the scientists safe, to keep Riri safe. So they both go down to the underwater city. From there, Namor, I guess, kind of takes Shuri on a tour just to show how big this was. Because initially, I didn't, of course, I wouldn't have thought, I wouldn't have, this is, I'm first time viewing, of course, but I wouldn't have thought the city would have flourished as big as it did. But like when he at first mentioned that he has more soldiers than Blaze of Grass in Wakanda, and then he goes down to the city and we see all those people down there, I was like, oh, legit, he may have uh, that amount of warriors and soldiers just to come up from under the water to overtake not only Wakanda but like his whole
The
plan was
world.
to take over the world basically, and I feel like he could do that, not maybe all at the same time, but maybe like country by country or something like that.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny like when we talk about that because I think here when we see him like telling Shuri their history and kind of what he's trying to protect, you know, because it's like now that you know what I'm trying to protect, you understand why I have to kill the scientists, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he offers a partnership for both of them to basically take over the world and ensure that their vibranium and that their resources are safe,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it's crazy because ultimately at the very end they kind of have this pact, you know, like I protect you, you protect me type of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like they were so close that here, but it's like they're both so in like different places, you know, but they are not looking too much at their commonalities, right?
Right.
um and I think it kind of it surfaces a lot of like the theme, because I feel like the themes of this film are centered on a lot of things, but a lot of it is like grief, anger, but fear I think is a big one, and that is kind of what's driving Namor's decision making. He's like, I need to destroy them all before they try to come and destroy me, you know.
But see, and that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't say it was necessarily fear. I would say it's I would hate to say that the common theme of the Panther, but coincidentally we've gotten it twice with a Panther, which is revenge. We got that in Captain America, the you
Civil
know,
War.
yeah, Civil War.
You know.
You know, and then we got that here to where, um, even though Namor's cause is just in terms of protecting his city. His whole plan is just based off of what he saw as a child, and that was pretty much like the enslavement of his people that were still topside, you know. And I can imagine that from there we can kind of compare histories. It's just that he was more open to taking action in terms of fighting everybody just to keep everything safe in his land.
Sure. And I think it's like it's such a complicated like situation with between the two of them because obviously like um Shori's like she's a child. Like Riri's in college, you know, she's
Right.
not a threat. You know, like she didn't even know the CIA got this technology because she's just making these huge ass projects for like I feel like their science teachers are being like, and build a volcano, and she's like, I will hand you a vibranium detector, you know? And so it was like she wasn't trying to create something that would
Start some
start
madness.
all of this. Yeah, but she did, you know, but obviously Shuri understands and that's just trying to tell Namor, but to Namor, she's a liability, you
Sure.
know? And so
But
he's like on the extreme side, which is very true to his character in the comics, because he's very like yes, he's a hero, but he's also kind of an a-hole, and he also kind of like he hates all the surface people. First of all, that's
I
like a
can imagine.
constant. But he's always on the edge of wanting to go to war with like the surface people.
Mm-hmm. Like I would say even if Riri doesn't, I think no matter what, there's gonna be something out there, and that's just something that Namor just can't control. Unfortunately, I feel like there's always gonna be someone smart enough to detect vibranium or just to do the next big thing, you know. And just this go round, it happened to be Riri, and even if he got her right and killed her, you know, it wouldn't it would only be a matter of time before I think whoever had the initial technology, even though it's kind of handed to the CIA, I think there may have been some blueprints out there to maybe replicate or whatnot. I think if anything, somebody has that. Not necessarily tech, but the schematics to build that tech. So I can see that being a future problem in the MCU, especially for I don't want to say Atlanteans, for what are they called? Call tell me
The
again.
people of Telecon.
Yeah, the people of Telecon. Yep. Because
See, and it's oh, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, just because no matter what, I think Wakanda is good. I think now it's just people are trying to salvage vibranium outside of Wakanda, and that's why it's an issue for Namor.
Sure, yeah, because like they're looking into like the oceans, you know,
Yeah.
for it exactly. And I think I love the way that you said that because I feel like it's very comparable to kind of like the race against like the super soldier serum, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the super soldier serum was made, the creator was destroyed, the super soldier serum was basically just absorbed into Captain Rogers, and that was that. But it didn't stop people from trying to recreate it, replicate it, and it
Sure.
didn't really successfully happen until um, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But it still continued on, so it doesn't change the problem. So I think um, they both have like common fears, or like they don't want like their worlds to be destroyed by like the greed of the outside world, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and as a result they themselves are like their own destruction because they're attacking each other, whereas they can easily be like in peace, you know. But it's crazy.
How do you feel? This is a random question. How do you feel about there not being really any connection to the conversation that Romanoff had with Okoye?
Oh my god, yes. Okay, I'm pissed. This is like the people wanted this, like I don't know how this could have been overlooked by the team. This is outrageous. I really think this is a loose strand. I do.
Yeah. Initially,
Like,
with them talking about like it was like underwater earthquakes, and then Okoye saying it's underwater, you know, I thought we would have maybe gotten more, especially on the Wakanda side, especially maybe possibly knowing of something happening or knowing of these people. But come to this movie, they know nothing of the underwater people.
And I don't know if this is something that got lost in the shuffle with obviously all the other things that they needed to accomplish for this film. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I love the film we got. So if
Sure.
for some reason them connecting those two things would have tampered with what they gave us, then I guess it was the right decision. But it is a loose strand nonetheless. So yes, I was a little salty. I was like, nope, because I do think the intention was that to be the segue into Black Panther 2, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But yeah,
Yeah, I would
I
have
think
thought so too.
yeah. So I think it was meant to be an anchor, but I think if anything, somewhere in the shuffle of trying to do all the things that this film was meant to do,
Mm-hmm.
it was scrapped. And so, like I said, I think we're very content with the film we got. So if it would have disrupted what we had, then I guess it's I'll take
Sure.
it.
Well, say while Shuri's getting the tour of a lifetime, you know, an undiscovered country underwater, we got what is homegirl's name? T'Challa's girl. You know what I'm talking
Nakia?
about? Yeah, Nakia. She is doing what she does best, which is being the best spy ever. And like initially, we saw or heard that she was a quote unquote spy in the first Black Panther. Um, but here we kind of catch up with her. She is in Haiti, kind of working with the people there. But when Queen, it's Ramonda, right? Queen
Mm-hmm.
Ramonda calls on her. Like she does what she does. She if she didn't learn or didn't already know the Mayan language, it was apparent she it didn't take her long to actually have a conversation. Initially, what I loved about like say the scene, she met this older woman. She was speaking Spanish at first, right? And we're getting the subtitles at the bottom of the screen, and all of a sudden, even before like the color of the subtitles change, like I hear the dialect flip, and then when I hear it, I look down and I see the subtitles are blue, and then the old woman turns to look at her, just like, oh, whoa,
No.
like wait, it's like, oh, you know, oh wow. So I thought that was actually pretty cool.
See, it's funny you mentioned that because I didn't even notice the subtitle color change, but that makes sense. But also, I speak Spanish, so I knew it flips without the color.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool. Like, that's a cool detail, especially when you have so many different languages coming into the mix with that. I think that's a cool detail out there. I didn't even notice it. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I think in total we got what? There were a ton of languages. We got Spanish, we got Mayan, French, English. I'm sure there were some Wakandan languages spoken out there. Either way, like we got a ton, you know. So shout out to Marvel, you know, keeping up with all the dialect coaches out there, you know.
And it's like, I think the language is so important because it's such a crucial, I don't know if crucial is the right word, but it's such a stamp of colonization, right? Because you see how the native tongues were essentially wiped off
Sure.
for, you know, the language of the colonizers, right? Like just like Haiti and France, right?
Mhm.
Mexico and Spain. And,
Mhm.
it's and so you see that as a reminiscence of colonization period. Like it's such
Sure.
a clear stamp of that history. And so I think it's really cool to see how she does flip from um Spanish into, and I don't even know the name of
Oh, I
the
thought it
other
was.
language.
I think Yadira said it was. It may have been Mayan because I think that's what she said. That was the
No,
language
there's
of.
the name is, yeah, but there's a name to that language, and that's what I'm trying to think of, but I
Oh,
can't
gotcha.
remember. And I'm just a disgrace to my people.
Man, no, I wouldn't say a disgrace just because you speak Spanish fluently. It's not like you're disgracing the Spanish language,
That's the,
but
the the language of the colonizers.
man.
But no, it's just interesting because I do love how this scene kind of showcased all of that. Like the woman, like you said, was like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you speak the tongue," and
Right.
so it's and also like I forget her last name, but I know her first name is Lupita.
Mm-hmm.
But she was, I think, born in Mexico. She speaks fluent Spanish, and she speaks
Was
it
she
beautifully
now?
here. Something like that, because I remember after the movie, my partner was talking about how like, oh, it was just so nice to hear someone speak Spanish but know how to speak Spanish versus when you hear it sometimes in movies and it's just like I just can't wait for this to be over because it sounds horrible.
No, you're right. Like she was born in Mexico City, Mexico.
Yes, and then he was telling me that and I was like, well, her name ain't Lupita for nothing. Like it's just like it was really cool to see.
Is Lupita a Spanish name?
That's how I've known it as.
I've
Yeah.
never. I'm sorry. I've never met a Lupita. I've never really heard that name until the actress. So I thought that like, cause say her, it says her parents were Kenyan, and I knew she had some. She was of some type of African descent. So I thought
Yeah.
Lupita was maybe like African.
Because there's Lupe, which is I have an aunt named Lupe. It's a very
Okay.
common like Mexican name.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would like a shortened or more like of a uh like a nickname for it is Lupita.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. Fun fact. Thank you. Where are we at? Um. Oh,
Um.
so back to Lupita, aka Nakia. She actually finds out because she's there to look for Shuri, and the old woman kind of gave her like a general gist of the man comes out of the water. At this point, she goes to the point and finds Shuri's kind of I guess her earring, one of those beads that kind of has a like a homing beacon. So she had this cool ass motorcycle looking speeder. I don't even know what it is, but it looks super cool because initially she dove into the water and I thought, I was like, okay, is she about to swim? I don't think she's
Also,
gonna make it. She's not gonna make it. But her speeder kind of just actually kind of came apart briefly and then formed around her body just to kind of take her down into that city. So I thought that was actually, I thought it was pretty cool as well.
all the scenes with her are like amazing. I love the like the fit that she has in this because she has like this emeraldy looking green colored like suit.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me a lot of because she comes from the river tribe and their color is green. And
Mm.
so I feel like it still has like, it's kind of like what Queen Ramonda said is like, you're still Wakandan no matter where you go, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so I love that it still has the base that's very Wakandan esque, you know?
Yeah.
And so she, she rescues Shuri, she rescues Riri, along the way. Like she did have to like kill the people that were holding them captive. And we see a scene from Namor and one of the guards that's like about to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a scene that I really needed for Namor because, he can come off very like ruthless and cutthroat, and I think this shows like the love for his people, and like the way his people have love for him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that they're having this conversation. And, ultimately he knows like he can't do anything to save her. But it's just like I think this moment is something I needed because it's almost like the ratio. Like for every like bad quality, you need like two redeeming qualities or something like that. That's kind of like the ratio of like an anti-hero. And I think that Namor is falls under that. Like he definitely did in the comics, and I think they play with that here too. But I think it's one of those scenes I needed because it's very redeemable for him.
How do you feel about Namor's people not really being? Yes, they have an abundance of vibranium, but they're not as technologically advanced as Wakanda.
See, okay, I had like a little bit of a gripe with like, okay, so when you get introduced to Talokan and like the empire of them, and like when he's showing it to Shuri and then leading into him telling her the story of his people, okay, didn't it bother you that basically everyone is just grabbing a leaf and smiling? Like that's as much as you can show us of like this like
I didn't. It didn't
civilization.
bother me. I was just
Like it just
amazed. I was visually amazed at that point.
oh
I
visually
was hypnotized.
100%. And it is visually amazing. But at the end of the day, when I was looking at it, like not even end of the day, in the moment when I was looking at that scene, I'm like, it doesn't feel genuine because all these people are just holding a leaf and smiling. And it just seems very like primitive. in like not an intentional way. And I think it even highlighted it for me when towards the end of this, and you get these scenes that shift back from like the beauty of like Wakanda and the civilization, and then also shifting back to Talokan to kind of show what's at stake for these two people and how it's actually very similar. Like they are trying to preserve the beauty of their nations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going back and forth on these things, and it's like you see Wakanda, and it's like you see like the life, and you see people like just living, and it feels very real. And then the ones that they cut to for Talokan, it's like these scenes of people holding like a leaf, and that's kind of it, And so it's almost comical to me, but also it's like I don't know what I want to. I don't know what I want to see them do either. Like, what do you do to the ocean? But I feel like that's what they should have given us, is a little bit more.
Well,
I don't.
say, just to stop right there, like say it's like what can you do under the ocean, but you have the ability to forge vibranium. So I feel like you should be able to do much more, being that you can do that to make weapons
Yeah.
and.
Like, I think it's no, and I think that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like it's not like vibranium excluded. It's like I feel like they don't show a real people. Like they're all just holding a
Floating
plant.
around.
This one guy has like this rock that he seems to get very close to. It seems like they're I don't know. It's like they're entertained by very little. God bless you. God bless you, telecon people. It's I don't know. And I don't know what it is that I wanted to see, but it just seemed like it was like they didn't give us enough as they could have. Especially when you do those little back and forth scenes, I feel like it's even more like it's demonstrated even more that they didn't really flesh out what the city actually would look like to feel the heart of it, the way that you see Wakanda, and I think it would be a big challenge to figure out how that would look underwater, but
If they did though, do you think then right then and there that's when we're talking Atlantis and Aquaman, because that those people had technology, they had boats, they had lights, they had everything. You know what I'm saying? So
like
maybe
a city. Like I want to see a civilization. I didn't really see that. I saw Harry Potter with the mer people underneath who were guarding the. You know what I'm saying? Tell me that's
right.
not what it looked like.
I didn't think about it until you just said it.
So
Yeah.
I didn't see a civilization, and I
Okay.
think that's where I feel like they could have done more. Like they did it so well for Wakanda. I feel like they could have done more in that sense, and I think that would have made like the people of Talokan more human to us, because I think that especially because they have to wear like the things on their faces to get them to breathe like outside of the water,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's harder to feel their um I don't like feel past the exterior, if that makes sense. And so
Yeah.
I think that plus the fact that they didn't really give us a really good representation of an active civilization underwater. Like they just gave us people holding a leaf and kind of doing this
You're stuck
smiling.
on that. You are
No,
stuck on
because
that
it's really
leaf.
like no, I'm telling you, because when I first saw it, I thought it was almost funny, and then obviously the scene continues and you get mesmerized by so many other things, so I didn't really ponder on it. But then when the scenes go back to back, and the worst part is that one of those flashbacks is like the scene of the guy with like this little rock thing approaching slowly and smiling kind of creepily. It like brought it back to me enough that I remembered to talk about it today. So I don't know what I would have preferred to see, but it just seems like they could have done more. They could have done more to give us a civilization.
They could have done more, but I would think now that we're kind of talking about it, this is a civilization that's been down there for, let's say, hundreds of years, right? They've never really come above ground. Let's say maybe until now, to the point to where they're being threatened uh, by everybody on the surface. So they haven't really come witness to any technological advances that, let's say, Wakanda has become witness to and perfected. You get what I'm saying? I feel like anything that we've seen, let's say here in real life, Wakanda is just taking vibranium just to kind of up what we already have, to where down below there's no need to build an airplane. There's no need to build a boat if we're swimming. There's no need to really uh, build like or technologically advance, being that we've pretty much learned the ways of the water. We've learned, I guess, how to build it. And aside from the leaf, what I saw was more so it was almost kind of like Avatar esque. Like it almost looked like kind of like these little hammocks that people were living in at some point. Um, that's what that kind of reminded me of. But with that being said, I don't know if they even need a reason to technologically advance, being that they're not coming above surface to go against another civilization like that.
Well, even beyond that, because I can definitely see what you're saying, but even beyond that, like I'm looking at, for example, like the scenes that are in my head right now when they're doing those flashbacks of like Wakanda and this and that, like the scene I'm honing in on in my mind isn't even say like, they're like ships and they're this or whatever. It's like I'm thinking of um like the place where they have a scene of it in this film too, but the I think the easiest way for me to articulate it is like in the first film where T'Challa and Nakia are walking just
Oh, I know
in.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
you see a civilization, a people,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean, like a community. You see the interaction of like a nation, and I feel like I didn't see that much of it, and I think they could have done more.
Gotcha.
So even like beyond like kind of what you were saying, like because I see what you're saying in terms of like, well, maybe they don't need to have that same kind of like use of vibranium for that kind of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Although I feel like they do. I feel like they do. They must have it. Like maybe, and this is the thing, because I did mention this to my partner. He's like, "Well, Grace, this is literally like the scratch of the surface, you know." And it's only the first time we're seeing them,
Mm-hmm.
and also it's not like this is their film. This is still Wakanda Forever, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a balance scale that leans towards one way. So I feel like we have so much potential to maybe get that fleshed out more and see more of it. I think just as an initial scene, but beyond being mesmerized by it, once you start looking at little pieces, kind of like there's something off about this. It doesn't feel like a genuine civilization. And so I think they could have done more, but
Okay.
also it's, yeah.
I may have to go. I'm probably gonna go back. I don't know when I'm gonna go back and see it, but I'll probably go just to see if I can see what leaves that you're talking about. You know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
there's a scene. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's amongst the leaf holding
It's on the
scenes.
tour.
It's amongst the leaf holding scenes, and you see it again also towards like those little flashbacky ones that I'm talking to you
Mm-hmm.
about. There's this guy who's holding this spherical looking thing, and he just looks too happy to just show this off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the pieces that threw me. So I just need you to see it, because I think once you see it, you'll think it's really funny just because of this conversation.
Okay. What was it? All right. So Shuri, and Riri are saved. They're taken back to Wakanda, and this is now quote unquote, let's say, an act of war against Namor. So he takes it upon himself to uh, take his people to attack Wakanda. In this attack, it was cool. Nothing too crazy. The only thing that we really got from this was pretty much the attack that he had on the queen, and then unfortunately the queen took that L. And yeah, I thought we would have got a little bit more action in terms of maybe like him taking a hit from a blaster of like the Wakandan jet planes, but he was too fast for him. And what else? What else happened in this little sequence? Yeah, nothing much. I don't even remember much as outside of the queen. Yeah.
I mean, that is the big takeaway, right? Because, after he took offense, obviously, I mean, you just killed his people, so he has validity to take offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after that, essentially, like, war has been waged, or essentially, like, the initial step into it.
Yeah.
He still gives them another offer from
Mm-hmm.
that point, right? Basically, like, you yield to me, or you will be the first in our conquest to take on the world,
Yeah.
basically,
Mm-hmm.
And he says, like, what does he say? He says, bury your dead, mourn your loved ones, and then we'll be back.
Right.
So it's a pretty significant time does pass between this event and then, I think what ensues afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say how much, but enough that, Riri was able to build her suit,
Mm-hmm.
and Shuri was able to perfect the replica of the heart-shaped herb, right?
Right, because initially, say with her failed attempts, I guess there was just a sequence in DNA that was missing in the code that was needed to make the herb, and Namor gave her the bracelet, which had a piece of their version of the herb, which shared, I guess, the same quote unquote DNA, which gave them the ability to make a 98% match. So let's say if she had this bracelet before, there could have been a slight chance, a very slim chance, she could have saved her brother, but that didn't happen until the end of this movie. Basically, she got the 98% for her to become the Black Panther. And that's what we knew eventually. We knew Shuri was going to become the Panther. But what was surprising was who we saw when she took the heart shaped herb potion. And if you want to just go ahead and tell us who we saw, tell us. Go ahead.
We saw Killmonger.
Mm. Definitely unexpected. I thought we were done.
Man,
Definitely done seeing him.
dude, if I was Shuri, you damn right I'd have the same reaction. No one came for me. No one came for me. I got Killmonger. Like, what is that? I just lost my mom. I lost my brother, who I still haven't given myself time to mourn for. And now I'm here, and I'm like turning the corner, looking for mom, and it's this guy? Like, come on. I hate Killmonger because he's such a good villain. Like, he's just too efficient, even in death, as you can see. You know, but it makes so much sense for him to appear because at this point, you know, she has not allowed herself to mourn at all. Like she says earlier, right, when she's having that conversation with her mom at the river, like, if I think about T'Challa too long, like, it's not going to be my ceremonial, like, garments that burn. It's going to be the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's loss, like that's grief that she's not allowing herself to feel. Now add the death of Ramonda, and you know Mbaku does try to give her counsel and guide her through this time, but she's not really ready to hear it, you know. And so she really is, like, if you look at it, but there's a lot of comparable things that you can look at with between her and Killmonger. You know, they're both kind of falling deeper into their own like grief, their anger.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, you know, when she does come back, like she's very ready to wage war, even though it means that her people are gonna die. Like there's going to be losses, and she doesn't seem to really be taking that into account because
Yeah.
she's so lost in her what's the word?
She was consumed by vengeance because that's the Black Panther theme. That's that's it. They're all consumed by vengeance.
That's what I was. There you go.
They're Batman.
Thank you. Yeah, and so I feel like it makes so much sense. But when he came around the corner, I'm like, dude, I was waiting for her and Ramonda to finish their conversation by the river, and they just didn't. It didn't. But man, I was gonna say something though. However, when before Namor interrupted the conversation that Queen Ramonda was having with Shuri, you know, she's talking about how this is something that helped her heal by burning their like the funeral garments to kind of be as a symbol of healing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from your grief, etc. And she starts to say something, and I don't know the exact verbiage. She says something to the effect of like, you know, T'Challa was, or T'Challa is, or T'Challa had, like, it was like she was about to give information about T'Challa, and then it got cut off.
Yeah.
And then Namor came in. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
She's like, I have something to tell you, and
Yes.
then we didn't get it. And I think if anything, if it's a safe assumption, it's what we got at the end of the movie.
It was not, because she didn't know. She didn't know. It was only after that when she went to go see Nakia. And she wondered why she didn't show up to the funeral because she had no idea. She learned about him afterwards. So that's why I'm like, what is it? What is it? We never got to learn.
Oh, wait. So how can it not, like, because being that the queen wasn't able to tell her, like, why couldn't it be the Nakia secret?
Because I don't think she knew about the baby. I feel like if Ramonda knew, Shuri would have known also. Like I think it really was just T'Challa that knew. Because I feel also, especially with like the passing of her son, I feel like if if she knew that he had a child, like she would have been more involved in that. Like I think it would have been so different. Like I really do feel like she didn't know about the child until Nakia told her. Like
So
when
do
they
you
were.
you're saying that that Ramonda met the son on the trip to Haiti?
That's what I'm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay. I'm not arguing here. I just need a clarification here.
Yes, that's what I think.
Okay.
And so then and then it leads me to believe, like, well, what the heck was she gonna say about T'Challa? And so
Mm,
then when, like, she's about to enter the ancestral plane, I'm over here thinking, okay, I know what's gonna come, and I'm excited. And then I get this guy, and so
this guy.
yes, this guy. You could sense my like disappointment. I was like, damn it, and they never got mentioned, so I'm not sure.
I can't say it's disappointment just because of who he is and his history with Wakanda. But what question that the question that I have would be, um, how come he's the only one to really like say take a potion but not see a panther? You know what I'm saying? Because or like everybody else has seen a previous panther on the ancestral plane. So say when Shuri took the potion, I would at least like I'm glad they didn't go like a CG Chadwick type of situation, but I would have thought I don't know. I think it made sense to see Killmonger being that he was a previous Panther technically. It just
It
doesn't.
makes Yeah, go
It
ahead.
just doesn't make sense for me now. Like just kind of thinking about it, that he's the only one that like he only saw his dad. He didn't really see. He wasn't taken to an ancestral plane where other Panthers came from, even though he went through the same ceremony as every other Panther before him.
Well, the potion takes you to the ancestral plane to your ancestors. I don't think it's specifically just Black Panthers.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why I think she thought she was going to see either her brother or her mother. Like she says, mom. You know what I mean? So I think there is like a, what's a word? Like I think it is that you see like your ancestors or like your past loved ones or something like that. So I don't think it's just like solely to a Black Panther.
Okay.
I think it does still make sense for her to see him because they are she is down the path of Killmonger, and so I think that it makes sense that he's the one that she saw,
Mm-hmm.
you know and it does turn into like that does become like a catalyst for what happens when she wakes up. Like she's obviously angry. She's like, no one came for me. That was heartbreaking when she said that. No one came for me. Like you already feel so alone. Maybe you have this moment of hoping to see your loved ones in the ancestral plane, and then you get Killmonger.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes back and she says, like, they rejected me, like they didn't come for me. And then she's surprised to see that the serum actually worked, because she thought it didn't work, being that she saw Killmonger and all this stuff. But it makes sense. I think that he is the one to have appeared.
Yeah.
And what a fan service! Because like I'm telling you, the reason I really don't like him is because he's effective and he's efficient and he knows how to be a good bad guy. And I hate that because it's scary to me. And we saw it in What If, and it's the same thing. But he's a fan favorite, so it's such a fan service to see him come in. But it makes sense for Shuri's development because she is headed down that road, and she gets really dark before she comes back up.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a chance he may come back?
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't think he was going to come in at all, but it seems like even in death, Killmonger is pulling some strings. So I don't know.
The
I
only
wouldn't
reason
be
why I'm bringing that
surprised.
up is just because of what was the whatchamacallit, the show and the
What
other
if?
plane, Moon Knight.
Oh,
Because
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
Moon Knight came back, so I was just thinking, I was asking, do you think he would come back, kind of based off of that?
Oh, okay. I see the question you're saying. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I guess it's not impossible. We know it does happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's Yeah, no, that scene was kind of crazy. But I was gonna say, so it's 5:25 right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a text. I saw it appear on my phone. My brothers were like, when are you guys gonna pick us up? Because we have our movies at 6.
Okay.
But this film was like almost 3 hours long.
It was a long
I
movie.
didn't realize that.
Yeah. I think the movie the time that we went was 5:30 and we ended up getting out maybe at 8:30, so it was at least 3 hours.
Wild to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is. I didn't realize just how long it was, and I guess that's a good thing, right? Like it's nice when you don't notice how long a film is because you know you're just so enamored by it,
Yeah.
right? But this is definitely gonna be like a part two because I don't want to
Sure.
rush like the end, and we still have so much more to get through.
All we
Um,
have is what I think all we have is the final act because say post serum is just like pretty much act 3. So I'm
yeah,
down to talk about that next week.
I think that would be beautiful, and I feel like it would give us enough time also just to kind of go over the overall themes that this film gave us, and how we can see it kind of connecting to future projects because there's a lot, and so I think that's gonna be good for next week for sure.
And being that today is the day that it came out, it is not up on the rankings yet. So hopefully by next Friday, it will be up just so we can place it properly on the ranking system.
That is so perfect.
Okay.
That is so perfect.
All right.
Boom.
Well,
Okay.
enjoy your second viewing of Black Panther, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Okay, and by next week, let me know if you see or notice anything different from your first viewing.
Oh yeah, that'll be great. I'm excited because then just that if there's anything we pull from this next showing, we get to kind of talk about it and recap as well. So that sounds amazing. Okay,
Cool.
we are signing off. This is Chill. I am Grace. We are from the Comic Cinematic Universe with Chill and Grace.
Wow.
We'll see you next week.
All right. See you guys next week. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.